take a moment now to introduce the wonderful artist, Nina Ghanbarzadeh. We are here today with A Pile on the Floor, the collection that is currently being exhibited at Woodland Pattern. I want to ask you to go ahead and introduce yourself and share any information that you would like our audience to know.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate your time. My name is Nina Ghanbarzadeh. I'm a full-time visual artist. I transplanted in the United States in 2001. I went back to school to UWM Peck School of the Arts. I graduated in 2013. So it's been 10 wonderful years for me doing making art. It was not easy, I would say. I had my own challenges, but I do not regret anything, any day of the past 10 years.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I'm that way too. So I tell people ask that question a lot, like, do you regret anything? And I always say no, because everything that you experience brings you to the present and to where you are. And so we have to just take everything and move forward with it.
Of course.
Awesome. Thank you. So I would like to start with asking you about what brought you to art. Have you always been an artist, or is this something that you found in the late 2000s and you're like, I want this thing? What was your experience?
That's a good question. I have always wanted to be an artist. I vividly remember when I was really, really young. And it goes back to when I was, I would say, third grade. That's when kids usually start to think about what they want to be in the future. Even at that age, I wanted people to come and see my exhibition, even though I had no idea, what does it mean to be an artist? What does it take? As a third grader, who knows? I just knew that I really loved making drawings and paintings. And then I would always dream that, people would come to see my exhibition and people would respect me for my art and nothing else. That was my childhood imagination and daydreaming. Sure enough, I would say that I'm living my dream, my childhood dream of being an artist here.
I love that. I love that. And that's another thing that I can feel in my spirit too. When I was in the second and third grade, I would tell my mother I was sick. I'll tell her my nose is bleeding. I feel dizzy. And I would stay home, and on the typewriter, I would type. And now I have the opportunity through genre to do all of this writing and all of these artsy kind of things. So I love that. I do think that the spirit of like wanting to create art is always something that is with us. Okay, great, thank you. So let's talk about this particular exhibition. We are sitting against the wall where it is, well, some of the works are draped along the floor, and they are beautiful, beautiful works that, first let's talk about what is the medium that you use to create these works?
Well, I was trained as a painter originally. I kind of shifted and moved towards writing, and there's a reason for that. But going back to your question, I mostly use different types of papers, from double-sided matte mylar, which is a man-made paper, to mulberry paper that are handmade, to printmaking papers and different types of drawing papers and drawing tools and writing tools, from pencils to inks and different types of mediums that I can find, to acrylics or fluid acrylics. But I also often switch my mediums depending on the content and what I want to say. But I would say mostly paper is what I use.
And what kind of paper would you call, for instance, this one where it's more see-through?
Yeah, all these papers are printmaking papers, and these are all mulberry in different thicknesses and different colors. So for this specific body of work, I wanted to work on a paper that looks similar to newspaper, because newspaper in time becomes yellow and starts to, the print starts to kind of vanish and becomes old and aged. And I wanted to have that look in this particular body of work. Some of them are white, but others are kind of have this yellowish tone to them.
Yeah, and as far as there's some needlework that exists in these pieces, what inspired you to use that?
Sure. Well, I think I have to take a step back and talk about um, the title of this exhibition and the reason before I answer your question.
Yes, absolutely. Please do.
Sure. First of all, I use my mother tongue, which is Farsi. Some people call it Persian, which is not wrong, but the correct word is Farsi. And I use specific words and phrases that they become eventually, they turn into compositions. And um, the way I write is like a macro and micro effect. So from far, all you see in is a shape. But when you get closer, the words start to reveal themselves. So it's really not about legibility. Legibility comes second to me. It's about what you see at first glance and how you can respond and how you can make a connection to what is in front of you. So if the viewer is really curious about what is been written in the words in the works, I offer the translation as work titles. So the work titles tells the viewer what I have been written repetitively. Sometimes I write how I feel or what I think at that moment. Often I borrow from Persian literature and about that specific day in my life or what I was thinking about the specific events or a moment. So the patterns came about. So a year ago, I applied to an open call with a portfolio of 8 to 10 works. Within that portfolio, I had 3 specific works that are in this exhibition. These works are older, and I wanted to include these 3 works, specific works, in this exhibition because in my statement I talk about them, and I wanted the viewers to look at the works and really see what I'm talking about. So 2 of these works, they have used geometric patterns that are inspired by Persian marquetry, or we call it khatamkari in my language. And I wanted to highlight this beautiful art that is made in Iran. And you see this art on boxes, picture frames, furniture, doors, things like that, or maybe smaller jewelries. So the artists, they use different species of wood. They cut it really thin. They glue it together, and they make this, very thin kind of um, wood, and they glue it to different objects. So I wanted to really celebrate and highlight that art. So that's why I use, and I was inspired by the geometric patterns that I saw in these objects. And I wanted somehow to incorporate those geometric patterns in this body of work. The third work that was included in my portfolio when I submitted was one work in which an English sentence could be read. But when you get closer, you would see that all these English words are composed by Farsi words. So from far, you would not see these Farsi words. But when you get closer, you would see that these Farsi words are creating this English sentence. I was told, of course, I was not accepted, which was fine. But I was told that my portfolio could go to the maybe second round. I don't know what was the jury process, because they could read this English sentence. If it wasn't because of this work, my portfolio would be eliminated, right away. And then I was told that these other 2 works that are using the geometric patterns in there, there is a danger for them to become decorative only. At that time, I didn't say anything. I just said fair enough, because my understanding and my knowledge about these geometric patterns would go only so much. But I was deeply hurt because these comments were not just about my works. These comments were about my heritage. It was really uh, uh, targeting my heritage, the culture, the history. Obviously, they did not have any further information. So I took that frustration into a positive thing by starting researching, reading articles, books. I started taking, online classes. And as far as I started to learn about these patterns, I noticed that there's a world of mystery, and it's it, it goes really, really deep into understanding what are these patterns, why they are making these patterns, and how they are connected to nature, and how they are connected to the cosmos. And you can expand your understanding about this world that we live in, and you can find your path to the creator. And we don't know who the creator is, we call it God. But we all have this understanding of, why am I in this world? So there's so much more behind these patterns, and they're not really easy to create. First of all, you have to be very precise, and you can expand these patterns to the infinity. So it's a very fascinating world, and I wanted to incorporate those patterns in this body of work. So what I had done in this series, I have started to incorporate my language, Farsi, and superimpose the patterns by stitching them to them, because stitching also is part of my culture, and we use stitching on fabric and thread extensively in different types of art, and I wanted to combine all of those in this body of work.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say and comment on is that there was a dismissal of your culture and your experience
Yes.
by the jurors
Yes.
of this exhibition. How did that impact you as the artist, as a person?
That's a very good question. I would say, first of all, the person who is giving the artist the critic should be aware of where that artist is in his or her career. If you are giving that harsh critic in grad school, that's why grad school are designed for, to push the artists out of their comfort zone. That is why, and the artists are well aware of that, their harsh criticism. That's how you start to think critically about your work, right? But I was not in grad school, and because I'm an adult, of course, it did hurt my feelings. I didn't take it lightly, but because I was an adult, it didn't prevent me from making works based on their comments. If I was a younger artist in my really early careers, that harsh feedback would just stop me for good from art making. Because artists are very sensitive, and it's not, what I'm saying is not just about me. Artists create because they want to release their emotions, their feelings, and it's very much therapeutic. What the people are not aware of, if you really give these harsh critiques to artists, you are not aware that you're stopping that person from releasing all these emotions that are built up within them, right? So because art making is therapeutic in nature, why would you want to say something so harmful that the artist does not want to continue making art for good?
Right.
But because I knew that, I should not, let this critic or comment stop me from making art, I took that as a positive thing, and I started to, make different types of art based on their feedback. But I would say that, especially people who are in a position in the artwork, they should be aware of when and how to give this critique to the artist, and pay attention to where they are in their careers. If they are younger, if they are just starting out, you would not want to destroy the artist's career.
Right, absolutely. With what you're saying, it's causing me to think about a conversation that I've had with one of my friends who is a curator. And we always talk about like the term fine art and how that makes space for some people and others, other people, and it doesn't admit artists in general into this space because you have to, live up to, this ideology of like what art is. Like it's some supreme matter when in nature, if you are creating something, that in itself is divine. And so that should be honored and respected. And there shouldn't be these walls that are put up to segregate, art. And the comment about your work, especially after you've done the research, you knew that it was part of your culture when you created it, and you felt that in yourself. This person clearly, may have not even had any information or knowledge about the patterns and infinity and the connection to the divine, to God. And it completely just silences, or could have silenced, who you are as an artist, your culture, and it dismisses thousands and thousands of years of creativity of a group of people. And I think that is a really dangerous practice in itself, that we have to make sure that we are very careful in making spaces for artists from all over the world to create, and not diminishing the work of an artist, the work of an entire culture, a group of people, their identities and histories. So I do, I'm thankful, especially because of these wonderful works and the opportunity to sit down with you. I'm thankful that you continue to work, because it is a hard space when you feel rejected, and that your work has been disregarded or said it's not important when clearly they were wrong.
For sure. Thank you for saying that. I agree with you 100%. I also wanted to say that as English speaking language people here, we take it for granted that everybody should know English. And of course, it has become like an international language. But it doesn't mean that every single person on earth knows English. What about the other languages?
Right.
And I always give the example of myself. Before started living here in the United States, and when I was living back in Iran, I think I have mentioned this story during my opening here, that I clearly remember going to the Contemporary Art Museum in Tehran and looking at some Western art that would have some English words on them. Of course, I knew the meaning, but I didn't know what's the context, what those words really means in the Western culture, because we can translate any language and it's so easy on our phones right now. But what really that words means in that specific culture and that specific time, what was the context, we don't know that. But I would never ever, even in my head, give permission to myself to dismiss that art because I didn't know English. I would think that, okay, I don't have enough information about the artist. I do not have any information about that specific work. Let me go and do my own research. Maybe I can understand this work better. So next time when I go back to the museum again, when I stand in front of that painting, I can, with a different perspective, I'm going to look at the work of art again and try to understand the artist. If I still don't understand, at least I know that I have done my research. I just could not make the connection, which is totally fine. You should not like all the art that are out there, but at least I have done my work as the viewer. I've done my part, but I'm not going to dismiss that art because there is another language in it. So there was a reason for the artist to use his or her language in the art making. And for me, as a dual speaking artist, I could very well use the English translation in my works, but there is a reason that I refuse to do that, because when it comes to poetry and literature, you cannot translate the sensibility and the feeling. Even if it's the best of the best translation, there is something that is being lost from one language to the other when you translate. And then I think there's a beauty in using the original language when you write it. When I write the same thing in English and I compare it to the same sentence as written in Farsi, not because Farsi is my mother tongue, because I use English every day, but there is a difference in the way that the curves are drawn or the lines are put on the paper or even the dots. There's a visual difference in both. So when I write the same thing in these two different languages, I say I would go with Farsi. And I'm offering the viewer something different to look at.
Yes.
Because we are surrounded by English, so I'm offering something different. I'm not saying something new, because written language in art is nothing new, and there are tons of artists who use text and script in their art, but this is something different. So I'm offering something different, so I'm hoping that the viewer can get curious and ask question, okay, what is this language? Which country do they speak this language? So this could be somehow educational for the viewer if they are curious enough.
Right.
But dismissing something that is different, I would say that is not right.
No, it's absolutely not right. And so you talk about utilizing your mother tongue and the beautiful curvature of the script of the text, and also you talk about the viewer being curious enough and doing their research to understand the works. And I know for myself, I enjoy that. I enjoy seeing something, and if I love it enough, I will go find out what this is to my best ability. And another thing that you said that I would like to come back to is that you have in the name of the works, you have what they say, what your works say. What do some of the works say for our audience?
Not all of these drawings in this body of work say something specific. Some of them do, some don't. So when I started working for this exhibition, it was a very difficult time. We kept getting the news coming out of it. We just came out of the election. The news of January 6th insurrection, and I listen to radio on a daily basis. And then the shooting that happened in Uvalde, and as a mother, I just could not stop thinking about that, tragic event. And then the news started to come out of my birthplace, the unrest, and then now they call it revolution. So it was a really dark time for me. So I started to write that these days are as dark as night, for me at least, in my head at least. Nothing was pleasant, and I could not stop thinking about what's happening there and what's going on here in both different, countries. I have a physical presence here, but mine was there, and then I would return back here. So nothing was really pleasant. Everything was really dark to me. So I started writing that, and some of the works, like the one that's behind you, this one here and this one, they all say the same things. These days are as dark as night. Then I started to switch and think about this exhibition, that this exhibition is supposed to be, these works are supposed to be on a pile on the floor. So these works are really not worth spending the time, are not worth being on the wall, because they are supposed to be on a pile on the floor. They are not worth exhibiting. So then I thought, so if people are going to dismiss the written language that I use, why even should I bother to write something it's legible even for Farsi speaking people? So I just started to just write gibberish. So it resembles writing in Farsi, but they really don't say anything. Nobody, even I don't know what I have written. They look like written Farsi. There is no specific words or phrases. I was just mimicking their writing.
Right.
So if people don't bother to even write the work title, why even should I bother to write anything? If it makes sense.
It makes complete sense to me. And I think that that is a protest, a beautiful protest in itself. That you are fighting against this norm of making things easy. Art is supposed to, that whole cliche, to make you feel something. art should make you think, art should make you reflect. And the fact that you made these beautiful works, some of them that say absolutely nothing, they are still a sight to behold. And what I really find interesting, in addition to the works themselves, is the way that you exhibited them as well. How much input did you have on how they were placed on the wall and on the floor?
So I really, really wish that I could. My original plan was really having all these works in the middle of the space, but because I have so much space here and they would need the space for their events, I couldn't exhibit anything in the middle of the exhibition.
Okay.
So I knew that I wanted somehow to display them as if they are not worthy, and they are just falling off on the floor. You should not be really taking care of these works. Really, they are not, um, uh, what's the word for that? They are not worth the time of the viewer or the curator or the person who's going to install them on the wall, right? But I love the word that you just used to describe this, like the protest. And I wanted to show that somehow, that yes, you're telling me that there should be on the pile on the floor. So there you go.
Right.
They're almost falling off the wall, and they're almost, on a pile on the floor, as you were describing.
So another reason, like I'm getting goosebumps. So another reason why I particularly love this exhibition, I like. I'm gonna call it mischief. I'm gonna call it not subscribing to the status quo. I'm going to call it. I want to say disheveled, but disheveled, like organized. Um, what I want to say, organized displacement almost, right? Because when we have artwork, right, we want it perfect and curated and beautiful. Well, I love the mischief of things not being perfect. And so I play a lot with text as well. And so when I heard about your talk, I'm like, I got to make sure I go to that talk because I love utilizing text in art. I love repetition of text as well. But I love when things are displayed in a way they're not supposed to be. And this is giving that. So my company, Genre Urban Arts, I've picked genre urban arts and not fine art because the urban for me means that some people have, lots and lots of money. Some people don't. Some people, everybody is still creating, and an artist, many people, I should say, are still creating, and an artist will see graffiti on the wall. We will see, very curated art spaces. You'll see people slapping stickers, etc. I'm a little, I'm still like a kid at heart, so I enjoy a little trouble, okay? And for me, the fact of this is wonderful how it's displayed because it is giving that not only just a protest, but the fact that these beautiful works, no matter how I display them, they're still gorgeous. I'm going to call it disheveledness of how the works are displayed is gorgeous. It means to me like this is real. This is humanity here. And so I just wanted to share that. I love that. And when I came in and they were really on the floor, I'm like, yes, put them on the floor, even though they're gorgeous works. We don't want anybody to damage them. But the fact that you're like, okay, well, if you think that, my work is, a pile on the floor, I will give you the pile on the floor. But how beautiful is it still? And I think that's the endurance of people of color, of people who, have and those that have not. Like we still endure and create with or without the acceptance, with or without financing, with or without places to exhibit. Like we still exist, and there's nothing that is going to stop that existence. And I think that really speaks to that juror saying, "This is nothing," or it's becoming decorative. It's not, aspiring to this idea of art that they have, but it's still so beautiful in any way that you could have exhibited. It's so beautiful. the folding, the parts of it where we can't particularly see because the works are folded, what is there. Like, I'm just so curious, like what is under there. Um, the stitching, the collage work, and also your script is gorgeous. Um,
Thank you so much. You just made my day. I mean, it makes me proud and really validates of how I felt, a year ago about the comments. It really validates my whole way of thinking about the comments, and then how I took it into a positive versus a negative thing. Um, but regarding the folded piece on the floor, because from far you would not really notice that they may be stitched with a thread. And I had a couple of people actually asking me during the opening that, are they drawn? I said, no, they are stitched, hand stitched. And one of the reasons that I had that specific work, so because you could see the knots on the back of the paper, that they're really, hand stitched.
Yes.
So I have to transfer the design to the paper, poke the paper on the right places, then hand stitch those. But thank you so much for all the
I love it. I love it. And I love this talk. I want to ask you about legacy. So, for instance, with me being like an African American artist, so often people are looking for me to talk about like my pain and my suffering as a Black person in America. And sometimes I choose to write about that and create that way. But there's so much joy in life. That I lived like in this Black body. And I really am interested in documenting and legacy of creating work. So I would like to know, like, what do you think about legacy and protecting your legacy as an artist?
Sure, that's a very good question. First of all, my birthplace has been in the spotlight for wrong reasons. There is so much more beside what is on the media and how that country and nation is being portrayed. And I'm not denying those things. I'm not denying that. But there's always good and bad, and there's all the spectrum. I mean, I should rephrase that. No place or no person is totally white or Black. There's all these, different gray values in between. So it's just like here. You cannot dismiss the entire United States because of the shooting that's happening, or because of January 6th resurrection. Can we dismiss all the Americans because what's been going on? Of course not. I have wonderful, the most kind American friends that I can find. I mean, some of them are even kinder than the people that I might know back, where I was born. So you cannot dismiss an entire nation because of few events or happenings. So I really want to show my viewers the different aspects of that nation. That country and that nation has so much to offer. There's so much beauty. The people are so kind, but nobody knows about that because we do not have any political relationships. By that, I mean the two countries do not have that political relationship, and people cannot travel. Americans cannot travel to Iran, so to bring back the news that, hey, what you see is not the real people. Real people are so kind. They love to have, to host you, and there's so much art and beautiful things. So I really want to show, even if my viewers are a very small number, to show other sides of that nation. And another thing is that when I go on the social media, I see that unfortunately that country is going under modern colonialization through social media. Like that beautiful language, sometimes I think that I'm reading Farsi, then I notice that what are they saying? I don't understand the language. So they are using English. So like out of 5 words, at least 3 are English words that are written in Farsi. So when I read it, paragraph, I normally don't understand what they're talking about.
Right.
And then I say, oh, they are using, so these are English words, but written in Farsi. And I'm thinking, why are you doing that? In my small bubble here in Milwaukee, I'm trying to celebrate and honor my mother tongue. And you are replacing those words with English words? That is not modernism. That is destroying your heritage. And I become so sad.
Yes.
That is really sad, and they don't understand what you are doing to that beautiful language. So what I'm trying to do here is really preserve as much. I'm not a linguistic. I'm not a writer.
Right.
But what I'm trying to do is like somehow say that, hey, people, use your own language.
Yes.
Don't kill your language. Because if you kill one language, you are destroying all that history and stories. You cannot pass on those stories to the next generation if you use a different language.
Right. And right, and as you said earlier, when you begin to translate, it doesn't hold the same meaning.
Sure.
It doesn't hold the same weight. And so while you were talking, I was thinking about a couple of things. Years ago, I worked in a bank, and I grew up on the north side of Milwaukee, and so we pretty much had everyone, every different nationality in our neighborhood, but I didn't have exposure growing up to, I would say like Middle Eastern people, Asian people, Iranian people. I didn't have experience with those people growing up, but I had the opportunity to meet a wonderful woman. Her name was Nazli Hassini, and I worked with her for years. And that was my first exposure to learning about some of the things that happened in Iran during the Iranian Revolution, but also like to meet and know somebody and learn about this beautiful culture, to taste some of the wonderful food. She made this rice with dates in it. And I just remember like, Nasli, when are you bringing this food in? But, and since then I've had the opportunity to meet many, many wonderful, kind, brilliant people from your country. But I always, like, I hold Nasli in my heart. I don't know where she is. The other thing that I was thinking about is, I don't know if you're familiar with, is a Nigerian author, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and she talks about the danger of a single story and how European countries have the privilege to have all of these different stories. Like you don't like, we don't have to just be, a bad story. Like you might hear about, a shooter, mass shooting, but you will also hear like all of these wonderful things. There's a lot of different faces that get to represent what it means to be, for instance, a white American or like whatever other European country. Whereas other people, Black and brown people, do not have the same privilege, and it tends to be this single story that stereotypes and minimizes the experience, the culture, just as we said here, the fullness of a people. And so while you're talking about legacy and that, I was thinking about how stories have been muted, like the fullness of the story has been muted.
Absolutely. So it's really important if the people who are in charge of spaces, venues, galleries, so it's important if the people in charge would give space to the minorities so they can come and share their stories. Because I think if we do not have the diversity, if we don't hear the full story as you were describing, it would be a very boring, bland environment, right? So I think it's important if whoever is in charge of any space, let others come and share their.
Move on. Your exhibition will be open for about another 2 weeks now. What is your next project? Are you working on something new yet? Do you want to share that? You don't have to if you don't want to.
No, absolutely. I think the whole thing is still in my system, and I have to take it out, and I have to keep on working within same series until I feel like, okay, I said what I needed to say. I feel like I have not fully said what I want to say about the whole experience of, submitting my portfolio and the whole thing, because it stuck me for a few months. It was in my head and I could not get rid of it. So I'm not fully done with that. I'm still working. The works might be different visually, but they are still within the same body of work, if it makes sense. But of course, I have other projects. I do not want to continue working in this manner forever. But then who knows, the works evolve by itself. They start to change as I continue making.
Wonderful. Okay. Yeah, no, I think there's a lot to say around that experience, and the fact that it stopped you. And I know what that feels like for someone to say something and it's not bringing you life. It's actually, a small harm, or maybe it's a large harm. It's a harm. And so we have to protect people and their peace, and artists. And not that people can't share what they want to share about a work, but it's very damaging to be dismissive and ignorant of things, because had that person taken the time to do research, maybe they would have answered you differently than telling you it's nothing but a pile on the floor.
Right.
I want to ask, we're going to wrap up soon, but I want to ask, are there any other things that you want to share with the audience concerning your collection of work or about yourself?
I maybe not about this exhibition, but I think I have said or mentioned this before, but I'm just going to say it one more time to the artists out there. Unless you are in grad school, because as I said this before, grad school are designed to push the artists to their limits. And you are aware of that when you go to grad school. And you know that the people who are critiquing you, that's their job, right? That's how you start to grow and evolve. But other than that, if someone tells a harsh thing about your art, think about it and keep it somewhere in your head, but don't put it in the trash totally. Think about it and try to understand the other person's point of view. Because I would say dismissing anything, however harsh or ugly the other thing is not healthy for us as well. We have to fully understand where the other person is coming from. And we don't want to really destroy the relationship. I think there's something human in that. I think that if we try to understand the other person, it's not going to be as harmful as totally being dismissal of the other person or whatever you have been just told. Try to understand them. Maybe try to put yourself in their shoes and think about what they have just told you and see what you can make of it. Maybe you really grow out of it, but I would say do not let them let you stop making art. Because I think making art is very therapeutic in any form of shape. When you write, you are putting yourself on the paper. When you make something with your hands, whether sculpture or a painting, you are really expressing yourself. So do not let anyone stop you from continuing making art and being creative, because you need that. It's in your genes and nobody can take away from you. That is who you are. I would say.
Yeah, it's the essence of self. And creating anything in itself is a huge feat. So I agree with you there. Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time. Are you on social media? Do you have a website? How can we find you?
Sure, I do have a website. It's my full name, Ghanbarzadeh.com. I always update my website with my exhibitions, upcoming events, my new works. And I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook as well.
Okay, cool. I'll get your handles if you want to share them publicly, and I'll put them in the video as well. Thank you so much for your time. It's been lovely. I appreciate you. I appreciate your work. and your experience and your breadth of knowledge. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for the interview. I appreciate your time. And I'm really appreciative of Woodland Patterns and giving me the space and the time to exhibit and, talk about, my experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. We did it. High five.
Thank you so